Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the witnesses for being here today to share your thoughts on improving VA care for our nation's veterans. I also appreciate the efforts of my colleagues for offering legislation that builds on suicide prevention efforts, bolsters our VA medical workforce, and develops unique care for women veterans. That being said, I am deeply concerned by some of the legislation offered today that I think will open the door to privatizing VA care. According to a Red Team Executive Roundtable report released earlier this year, an alarming rate of veterans are being pushed to community care providers, threatening to erode VA's direct care system. I believe some of this legislation will only push us closer to that breaking point. My first question is for Ms. Burke. The Complete the Mission Act, H.R. 10267, would codify existing community care access standards. Can you explain why this could potentially be problematic?
Thank you, Congresswoman, for the question. What the codification does is basically lock in the rules for access, and consequently, it doesn't give the agency flexibility in determining really access metrics. It's not that we don't need access metrics for some stop codes or clinical provisions. It's just making a great blanket over access, drive time. Is that germane to clinical outcomes? Is that germane to the cost of delivering those outcomes? And is that germane to patient satisfaction? Those are kind of the three tenets I look at, and I think the VA should be looking at, and quite frankly, maybe even Congress should be looking at, in order to determine are the taxpayers and the veterans getting their bang of the buck.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so more flexibility is what you're saying that would
Right.
be helpful as you're looking at those metrics. And then could you also answer, in the absence of one-size-fits-all access standards, how should VA, with oversight from Congress, manage access to community care network?
Thank you again for the question. I think the way I kind of think of it is really driving home best medical interests, specifically in the fact of one size does not fit all. So, like for an example, even though it may be politically charged to say a veteran may want a total knee replacement, but he may be morbidly obese, his sugars may be uncontrolled, and he may need assistance even getting 10 feet of walking. That person may not meet the definition of best medical interest for surgery. But then we have other cases, for example, where a veteran, spinal stenosis, a diagnosis that's very common among our veteran population, a person has failed mat exercises, he's still having intermittent claudication, he or she, and then at the end of the day, you know, Indianapolis may not have water or pool therapy. That may be a situation, if the person's open to it before having surgery or before having other interventions, that we do a trial on those things. So I think that's where we should be focusing on, what evidence is out there for what diagnosis is, and specifically, you know, what's the cost of that and patient satisfaction.
Can I also ask, Ms. Burke, from your perspective, how does the quality of care provided by VA-employed healthcare professionals compare to that of private sector providers when it comes to veteran-specific needs?
Thanks for the question. I think this is one of the things I think is not very well known, that I wish was a topic for future generations of hearings. I think the research department, specifically in VA, is excellent. They did a recent systematic review of over 2,000 studies. I think you heard it mentioned in the prior panel's testimony, as well as the VFW's testimony, and generally found that VA care is as good, or if not better, in many of those studies. Now, not all of it wasn't necessarily conclusive, but the very things that people suffer from, CHF, lung screenings, a variety of things, VA does better. And so we want to make sure that when we are going out of VA, that it's going to be faster and as same quality as we're delivering internally.
Okay, thank you, and I'll yield back.
Thank you.